beekeeping.
Yeah, I don't think they'll sting you. I think they'll quicker sting me. So that's your bottom board. You have your two deeps. Deeps are deep boxes. They have depth to them.
Oh yeah, look at that.
You see how they're very wide.
Yeah, it's 1, 2. Yeah, look at that.
Very deep. And inside here are kind of where the queen's living, where the eggs are, where there's going to be a lot of brood, pollen, nectar. This is kind of like the living room, kitchen, bedrooms. This is where everybody lives.
And the brood would be the
eggs.
The eggs,
right?
The eggs.
The difference between eggs and brood. Brood is generally the term you use when you're talking about like really well formed clusters of eggs. I would say.
Okay.
Above here you have honey supers. So this is a honey super, honey super, honey super.
Honey supers.
Bees kind of live in a pattern system. They're going to build out their comb in the center of these boxes, and then everything above the deeps, sometimes they'll go into the first super with eggs, but above these they're going to put honey, and they store kind of like for deep storage for the winter. So the honey they're going to store above them. It's just based on how we position the bees. Like if my bees started their hive up here, they'd probably maybe store their honey down below. But because I stack them up from the bottom up, they start by putting their eggs and stuff in here and then stack up their honey above.
Is that done to, not disturb the sort of the hub, so to speak? You want to, sort of dip into the roof?
You got it, man. You got it. So when we harvest honey, we want to have as minimal impact on our bees as possible.
Lovely.
So by being able to harvest the honey from the top of the hive down, it's far less invasive than if I was tearing up the hive from the bottom up. The bees do store honey in the deeps, but that honey is strictly theirs. I would never harvest that. That's their honey for their bees.
Okay.
And as a beekeeper, I need at least 2 deeps worth of bees to go through the winter in order to have a good chance of survival over the winter. Usually I'll have 2 deeps and a super just to make sure they have a lot of food.
Right.
Because keep in mind, honeybee is the only bee that produces excess honey. Bumblebees produce honey, but they don't produce enough for us to actually eat. They'll produce some for themselves.
Interesting.
But if we harvested the bumblebee honey, we'd kill the bees.
Wow. It's like, and of course, we're going to get into the hive mind and the communication, the dancing. But I wonder, not to go into consciousness, but like too much, but like the awareness of the future.
Yep.
I mean, what organism would make something more than it needs? Like, it's a future planning mechanism.
You got to think about that. I mean, they're the only insect,
they're
only bee that produces more honey than just in abundance. Can't have too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
And that's why it's great to have them in a Langstroth hive, because with the invention of the Langstroth, it allowed us to sustainably take the honey out of the hives without killing the bees. Before that, beekeeping was a very destructive practice because you take the honey out, and normally that would destroy the hive.
Oh, really? And so what we're talking early 1900s?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Maybe even a little earlier.
And what's the buzz with the flow hive and the non-invasive hives? Is that really worth it?
Hives,
is it?
I have mixed responses to flow hives.
Yeah.
Obviously, when it came out, I got about 150 emails from people telling me to buy the flow hive.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of making it easier on beekeepers and on the bees, right? That's important. I don't use flow hives because I don't want to spend the money. I have a lot of equipment that I bought for very, very, very cheap.
Yeah.
A box like this will run me $14, while if I bought a flow hive like this, I believe it's a couple $100.
Wow.
I could be wrong, but it's a lot more money than this.
But it is substantially more expensive. Right?
Yeah, that's the first thing. The second thing, the only thing the flow hive saves me time doing is just it allows me to not have to do the whole harvest process, which for me in my scale of beekeeping, I probably can save like 2 days of work, maybe 16 hours of work maximum by having a flow hive. But other than that, it doesn't save me much time. So 16 hours of work that it would save me, I don't really need to save, and that's because I have volunteers and interns and staff that harvest with me. Everybody likes to harvest the honey. It's a big community event we have where everyone comes together, we all harvest it together, and everyone takes a jar home. It's a really great experience for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Our summer interns love it. So, the flow hive really doesn't save me that much, and for the amount of money I'd have to spend to get it, it isn't worth it. I also would say that, like, the bees aren't able, you can't force them into a pattern. Yes, they will lay their eggs in one area and put their honey in another, but sometimes hives don't do that. And to have a flow hive that requires the bees to do that specific pattern, in other words, to fill the flow hive box with just honey so I can harvest just honey instead of harvesting eggs. Because when you turn that ratchet on the flow hive, you're cracking those cells. And
communicate. Explain that to us. So this could be a flow hive. It looks almost exactly the same, but one of the deeps has a sort of a crank or
right. From my experience, it's either a deep. I think they do supers as well. But there's a crank in it. You crank it out, that cracks the cells open, and that pours
the honeycomb,
the honeycomb cells.
Matrix.
You got it.
Okay.
The thing is bees don't always just lay honey in one box. For example, in this super, which is mostly honey, there are still eggs in here.
Could be brood.
And I can't harvest that honey now because I have the flow hive there. I have to now do it the normal way because the eggs. Part of that flow hive is now laid with eggs.
Right. It seems like a very American thing to try to do. Speed it up.
Yeah.
Sometimes nature has
It's a cool viral thing. I think for a small scale beekeeper with 2-3 hives, it sounds reasonable. But for my scale and also for kind of practicality and consistency and ease of doing everything, it just makes more sense not to have it. But I respect those guys for like coming out with an idea and trying to push it forward. You got to try and improve. If you can't innovate, what do we got?
Right.
So there should always be innovation.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's your honey supers here, and then you have your outer cover. So outer cover, very simple. It's really just a piece of metal on a wood frame. This radiates heat off of it, so it's white or reflective. That keeps heat from getting too hot in the hive, and also keeps water out of the hive. Okay. I put a couple of bricks down so that the lid doesn't fly off. Keep animals from trying to pry the lid off, and that's pretty much it. When you site a beehive, you have to think about the location it's facing. So everything in beekeeping depends on the beekeeper. And I want to say that because some beekeepers, if you get a room full of beekeepers together, is what people will say, and you ask them all a question, you'll get 10 beekeepers, you ask them all the same question, you'll get 12 different answers, right? You'll get tons of different answers. So a lot of beekeepers face their bees southeast for that early morning sun in the winter, and I do that. But I also have been experimenting with facing my bees the other direction, and I haven't seen a big issue with that either. So, facing them southeast is important, so my bees are facing southeast. That's the early morning sun. They are in decent sunlight here, but they do get some shade from the trees. Down below here, you'll look way down there. That's a stream. That's a little stream that always has water in it.
All right.
That stream is an important asset to this location. The reason it's important is because bees need water. I think a single hive will drink, I don't know if it's 5 gallons or 1 gallon, I can't remember, but they drink at least 1 gallon to 5 gallons of water a day as a beehive. I can never remember the exact metrics. I apologize.
It's substantial.
For that.
Yeah, no,
but they drink water, and they need water. And if you have 20 hives here and they're all drinking water every day, they need a water source.
Right.
So that stream has been a big thing for me. I don't have to provide them water. They have water. And that's an important thing for keeping them cool on a hot summer day. And for just everything the hive goes through, they need water for it. Every living thing does. So back to that point. So bees also prefer water that's stinky. So if you provide them with like wetland, like that water is dank. It's like really like pondy and smelly. Bees like smelly water. They go for smelly water. Some people think that's because of the life in it. The bacterial, the
fungus,
microorganisms.
protists,
right.
microbes, yeah.
People believe that bees look for that type of stuff because that life they want to bring back into their digestive system and bring back into the hive.
The microbiome again. Strikes again.
You
right?
got it, dude.
Like
you got it.
I mean, everywhere. Microbiome with plants, with the residuum bacteria, and with humans and the bacteria in our gut, the second brain that many people talk about in our gut, and the bees.
Yep.
It's amazing how much we need to appreciate the things we can't see.
I've heard there's research coming out about bees licking the juices off of mushrooms and taking those mushroom juices back to the hive. So bees like stinky water. If you raise bees near like a community pool and it's well chlorinated, the bees are going to go to that pool, not because they want the chlorine, but because they smell the chlorine. And the smell of that chlorine reminds them of stinky pond water.
So it's
not nearly as good for them. But they are going to go to the
smelly
stuff.
So they can smell.
Right. Oh, they can smell.
Huge sense of smell.
Bees do most of their communication and most of their navigation by smell. Everyone thinks it's color. Bees see a beautiful flower and they're going to go to that flower because it's beautiful. Well, they will. They will go to that flower because it's beautiful, but it's not really that. It really is a smell. They can differentiate color decently well, but they not like us. They don't have the same palette.
They don't have
the
Roy G. Biv visible light spectrum.
They do not.
It's
not
limited.
the same way.
Interesting, because I know some like mantis shrimp and other things have. You can see ultraviolet, infrared.
Right. Bees do things by smell. So they have 4 sets of eyes. They have the 2 big ones that you'll see in front of their face for flying outside, and then they have 2 on the side of their heads for navigating with inside the hive. The reason they have eyes on the side of their heads is because in the hive it's black. It's pitch black inside, and those eyes let them see in the dark inside the hive, kind of sense their way around the hive.
Right.
And that's why they're on the side of their heads, because when they're on comb, they need to look to their left and right, not in front of them. But yeah, they're pretty predominantly based around smell. and bees will smell the flower that they want and kind of fly to it based on the smell.
So when I was in East Orange yesterday with my good friend Emilio, he was saying to his 2 young kids that were like really interested, so we invited them into the garden. Stay calm. They can feel your fear, relax. And I immediately thought pheromones.
Yeah.
I thought chemical signatures.
For sure.
And humans can you might say, oh, it's my intuition. Well, maybe it is your intuition. Maybe it's also the fact you're smelling something that you don't consciously know of, and that means fear. That means mating. That means aggression. That means family friend. So perhaps that's in a direct.
Totally.
Pheromones.
100%.
Chemical signatures. Plants give them all.
Bees know your smell. And the more you beekeep, the more they know your smell, and they know to associate that smell with either a really nice person or a not nice person, and they know the type of beekeeper you are. I'm particularly smelly. I'm a smelly dude as an environmentalist.
Right.
And they definitely know what I smell like. Bees, I have a very good relationship with my bees, I think. It's tough to say because they're a complicated insect, and they're going to kind of be in different moods, different days. But I feel that I have a pretty deep connection with them and a love for them, and they know my smell.
Right.
And I had a beekeeper named Brett who was an amazing guy. I love Brett, and he's doing really well right now. He's working for the EPA down in Philadelphia.
Wow.
But he was my beekeeper for a couple of years, and he would get stung all the time.
Really?
And he said to me, Eric, I don't think the bees like me. And he was right. I mean, the bees associated him with maybe not the best thing.
Hair or something.
And they just didn't like his smell, and they just really, really stung him a lot.
Yeah.
And he didn't mind. He loved bees either way. But it's important to know that bees can smell you.
They can smell you. Think about, obviously they can smell bears and raccoons and other animals.
Oh yeah,
so maybe,
big time.
Maybe, evolutionarily, certain chemical bonds and proteins
you
can
gotta
give us
you gotta remember, you gotta believe it, man. And it's important to also know that bees, when someone comes and they're working in a hive and they're brand new, the reason that person may get stung is because they're sweating a lot. They're profusely sweating out a lot of stress scent. Yes. They're sweating out a lot of maybe even fear.
Cortisol,
and those smells the bees pick up on, and they'll say, oh, this person might be a threat. This person might be, this person not so confident. It's the same thing with a horse. You sit on a horse, you have to sit in a certain posture. Same thing with bees. They can smell you, and if you're not chilled out, you're not relaxed, you're not happy, then they might not be so happy to see you.
I love you, bees.
Yeah,
thank you for pollinating our crops and letting us all live.
And I can tell, like right now, me and Alex are standing right next to these hives, and they know we're here. They know we're here since we drove in here.
Right.
So they have had no problem with us. So and there's reason for that. I've brought people here, and we've been standing 250 feet away, and someone's been stung.
Wow.
And that's part of because the bees know we're there, and they check you out. Yeah. And if they think you're a threat, they're gonna let you know not to come by.
And when they sting you, that is a significant. I mean, that's a kamikaze, man.
That's a kamikaze. They're killing themselves.
They're saying, all right, I'll take one for the team.
Right. I mean, you know what? I also say sometimes bees do things. They do things that maybe we don't think it makes a lot of sense. Like sometimes they'll sting people, be like, you didn't really need to sting that person. But sometimes bees get nervous, get worried, and they just think this is it. I have to sting, and it isn't always the case. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll be working with bees and they'll just like buzz me. They'll like right in your face, like bzzz, hitting you in the face. But they're not stinging. It'll be like hitting you in the face to see if you're gonna react in a negative way.
Oh, is this a predator? Is this a predator?
Right, exactly. And if you kind of just chill out and relax and not move, let it check you out for you have to patience, a couple minutes. It'll go off you. But it happens. I mean, I get stung by bees. The other day I was here and I got stung in the face. I mean, luckily I'm not allergic at all. I don't have any reaction. But a lot of people get stung in the face. Your face ain't gonna look the same for a couple days.
Right.
So,
and speaking of allergies, because I teach and I'm always planting the seed or buzzing about bees and talking about the importance of getting them on our campuses, on public schools and charter schools and private schools, on everywhere. Yeah. And for neighborhoods, private, public, or whatever, to get these things. I mean, Moravian Academy has a beehive. I know that Rick Dugan, who leads the amazing Princeton Day School for Boys of the Sacred Heart, has bees on his campus. I mean, this awareness that is so critical, and the fact that we don't. I mean, I've done research. I can't find an insurance policy that covers them. Yeah. Because it's a naturally occurring, quote, act of God. So when you look at administrators, when you talk to the higher level, the parents, the kids, the fear of stinging, and someone that could have anaphylactic shock.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
We want to keep those people alive, of course. I just want to, ask you, I guess one of the biggest experts I know on bees, how can we convince or start to talk to them about, hey, listen, we can have EpiPens strapped to our legs. Let's do this.
Let's talk about that. I want to show you something. Come over here.
Yeah, let's do it. I feel like I'm in like Costa Rica jungle, like Nicaragua.
It's a pretty wild space here. So come on down here. I'll show you.
Wow, you have this many more.
Yeah. So here, I just want to show you guys this. So these are some of my other hives here, but this hive behind me is probably 90,000 bees.
90,000 bees.
This is yeah. I have a ratchet strap holding this thing down. It's so tall. It's the biggest hive I've ever had. And it's kind of, there's a lot of different hives here and all the different sizes and scales. But these hives are standing right here, and if you look over this way, you're going to see another garden here. And we're on the campus of Bergen Community College in Paramus. We have been here for 6 years, and we've worked with the students here. We've worked with the teachers, the professors. We've done educational programs here. We still do. But these bees, there's, like I said, 1.5, 1.9 million, 1.7 million bees here. And directly over there, not 250 feet away, is the Child Development Center. Preschool.
Right
Correct.
there.
Correct.
Wow. Never been stung.
That's and that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I asked, we've worked with the preschool before. We've done educational programs with them on the bees. And I said to him, have you guys ever had any issues? And he said, never.
That's awesome.
Not a single sting. And
6
look,
years.
1.5 million bees, 1.6, 1.7.
What are they? Crunch those numbers.
That's a lot of bees 250 feet away from a preschool.
Yeah.
And the kids, not only do the kids go out here and play, they really don't have any issues. So look, bees do not sting people just because they're nearby. It's I think that distance for that amount of kids and this amount of bees is a good one.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put these directly next to the building, because the closer bees are to any living thing, the more nervous they get.
Right.
But I don't think that to not do beekeeping because you're afraid everyone's going to get stung is a reasonable thing. It's not something to be afraid of. Bees, especially with 2 hives, they can be managed, and they will not be a big issue to people, and they're not going to be a big nuisance and sting everybody, and everyone's going to go into anaphylactic shock.
Right.
I just don't see it happening.
And you can put them on the rooftop.
Correct.
Safe, tucked away.
Correct.
Make sure you have plenty of pollinators.
Correct.
A phenomenal, stinky, dank water source.
It's just not an issue. Now I have tons of insurance, certificate. I have general liability insurance, board and officers insurance, truck and auto insurance, all that stuff for MEVO, and we've never had to use it with anything to do with bees.
Wonderful.
And they just, yes, occasionally people get stung, but the chance of that person having a reaction of anaphylactic shock is extremely low. Brett, my beekeeper who worked with us, was stung many, many, many times over the course of his time beekeeping with us. And one of the last times he got stung, he had a severe reaction. He had a reaction where he wanted to go and he drove himself to the hospital, and he had to get checked out because he had a lot of swelling and his throat was closing,
right.
Which is an example of anaphylactic shock or similar behavior. And the doctor told him that he was allergic, 100% allergic, stop beekeeping.
Interesting.
And so he didn't listen. He came back and kept beekeeping, and the
Good
next
man,
day he was stung